Hello fellow lovers of the liminal and the weird, and welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. Today I'm going to be talking about the second story in Terminal Boredom, which is a collection of sci-fi short stories by Izumi Suzuki. I've now read two of the stories in this. I go over the first one, which is called Women and Women, on the Patreon, and the next one that I'll be going over today is called You May Dream. So let me give a quick synopsis of this. We open with two women having coffee together, and we are told that they're friends, but it's very strange because the narrator of the story, both of them are unnamed. The narrator of the story right away feels unreliable. She doesn't seem to care about anything. She calls herself a people pleaser, but she comes across as real grumpy and kind of crummy to her friend. She calls her friend ugly, and the way she describes her is she uses words like, "I felt a sticky glare behind me." Just really presents this friend of hers in a strange way. And then we learn that, well, she says, "This is really my only friend, and I've known her since elementary school." So they've been friends forever. And they start discussing, and it's interesting because so far there's been nothing that really makes it feel like the future, but this narrator's friend pushes a button and a bubble closes over their table and they can speak without anybody overhearing them. And she starts talking about the population department and how disgusting this new process is. And the process that they've introduced dealing with overpopulation in this world is that they are putting people to sleep in cryosleep. And they're going to wake them up like hundreds of years or 100 years in the future and let them live their lives out later, because there's not enough room for everybody to live out their lives at the time that they are born. And the narrator's friend is quite livid about this and is expressing herself. And it seems like every time this narrator's friend tries to describe her unhappiness and her feeling that this is an unjust way of doing things, it grates on the narrator. And quickly the narrator realizes that, so the way that they decide who has to go into cryosleep is a lottery style. So people just get a slip and says, "Sorry, you got to go into cryosleep. You have been randomly decided." And she's saying stuff like, "We don't know if the upper echelons of society are even in the lottery. They pretend they are, but they really aren't." And we even get the sense of, like, are these people actually put into cryosleep, or are they just killed? Nobody knows. So eventually the narrator realizes that her friend has a slip and has been selected to go into cryosleep. And it's so Japanese the way that this is revealed, because they speak around the subject. Instead of revealing it outright, her friend just finally says, "When did you get a slip?" Because she realizes it without her friend telling it to her that she has received one of these slips. Really well done. And then her friend asks her, "Hey, the reason I invited you here is I would like to ask to download my consciousness into your dreams." And this is, for me, where the story really takes off. And I have an obsession with the subconscious, dealing with dreams in science fiction. I love it. It's a trope that this channel has explored very, very deeply. And I'm excited to kind of add another story to that trope, because there is a dream machine, although we never see it in the story. They have found a way to download people into other people's subconsciousnesses. And what that means is they share a body, but not when the person's awake, only when they're dreaming. So basically, the only time that her friend will be able to continue to exist is when she's dreaming. And she says, yeah, I've always dreamt really vividly. And their friend says, yes, I know. That's why I'm asking to join you, is because I'll get a lot of time to be conscious while you are dreaming. And it doesn't mean that a friend can control the body or anything. It just means that they share the dreams together. So right then I was really hooked. I really love this idea. And of course the rest of the story is what they experience in the dreams together. So Izumi Suzuki is a well-known Japanese personality of the 70's. She was a model and an actress, and then she became a writer, and specifically a science fiction writer. She's known as a feminist science fiction author, which was very unique in Japan. And really, truly, she led a very open to the public life. If you want to know more about her, look her up. A really, really interesting personality. This book wasn't published in the United States till 2021, and this is the first time her work has been translated into English. I don't know when this story was published. This book has been very bad about giving any information about the original Japanese names or publications of these stories. I just can't find the information in here. But I'm guessing all of these are from the 70's to the mid-80's, because she ended her own life in 1986. And this particular story was translated by David Boyd for this collection. It's been really interesting getting to know this writer, because I had heard about her so much before and haven't had the opportunity to read her in English. And I've been pleasantly surprised by this work. It is very strange, but in a really good way. And the best way that I think I can describe this is it's a mix of Yukio Mishima meets Haruki Murakami. And just to go a little more in depth into that, the character work that she does in these stories reminds me a lot of Yukio Mishima. These are highly flawed characters, a lot of them dealing with extreme obsession and other character flaws, but the surroundings and her kind of writing style are more modernized and remind me of Haruki Murakami and some of these younger Japanese writers. A little bit of Banana Yoshimoto in here. Really, really interesting writer. And that is the challenge I kind of faced on first reading this story, is that I had to figure out where the arc was. Because this is not an arc of plot as I initially felt that it was. This is definitely a character arc. And all the plot points that happen aren't as important as what the characters go through and how it changes them. Which is the really complex part of this book for me to dive into. And it's interesting because I find that it's very hard for me to discuss these stories very eloquently. They seem to me to be almost very personal in two senses, in that they're very personal to the author. And I don't want to say that she's revealing stuff about herself in these, because we have to divorce the work a little bit from the author, not completely. But that the characters, she gets so personally close to the characters and looks at them so unflinchingly that it feels very personal to them, and my reactions have that same kind of personal feeling. I don't know how to describe this any better than that. It is extremely well done, and I'm very happy to find that so far her work is as good as I was hoping and have heard that it is. From here on out will be spoilers. Honestly, this isn't really a story I feel like I can spoil, because, like I said, the plot of this is the least important aspect of it. We've already got the two main scientific ideas of this. She lives in a society where the overcrowding has become such a problem that they hold a lottery and decide who they're going to put into cryosleep to wake up later, but nobody really knows if the cryosleep is actually happening or if they're killing people off. And as kind of a consolation to these people, they have the technology to download people's consciousnesses into the brains of other people that will allow them to be conscious while the other person is dreaming, so that they are together in their dreams. So the rest of this book is kind of goes back and forth between the narrator's waking and sleeping hours, and her sleeping hours, they both try to control the dreams, and they are completely incompatible people. They do not get along well. While the narrator wants sunny and dry weather, the friend wants wet, kind of gray, dark weather. And slowly we start to realize that this friend is a very obsessive personality. She obsessed over a boyfriend she had for a while. And what this leads to, and I could read this like 4 more times and probably glean a lot more from it, so this is my first reading reaction to this. What this leads to is her destroying the dream world and creating this post-apocalyptic wasteland in her brain. And the friend hates it. Of course she doesn't want to spend the only time that she can be conscious in this terrible, terrible world. Meanwhile, when the narrator's awake, she's always tired and always hungry because she dreams very vividly, so she's dealing all night with her friend in her head, and she doesn't ever feel like she gets enough rest. It's really starting to break her down. So in the end, they kind of both decide that they need to remove her consciousness from her. And the book ends with our narrator sitting at the table with really confused emotions of how she feels losing her friend, but also holding a slip of paper that shows that she is going to be put to cryosleep. And she doesn't seem to really matter. She's kind of a nihilistic character. She doesn't really care about anything. And she tells her mom, I'm going to go into your dreams. And she seems to... The post-apocalyptic world at the end that the dream has become seems to be the world she likes best. And I think to her, it's a kind of a reflection of the badness in her. By the end of the story, we realize she doesn't care much for herself. This is a sad story. This is a challenging story. But above all, I think this is a really, really good story. And I'm hoping that all of them in this book are as good as the first two. I mean, just absolutely wild stories. The first one left me so confused and made me question so many things, but I loved it. And I talked about that one over on the Patreon. I do plan on going all the way through this book. I think that number one, we're very lucky to finally have these in English, and number two, I think that this is an important sci-fi writer that should be looked at. So hopefully this will get more people to read Izumi Suzuki. 2 complaints I had about this story. The first one is and this seems like a modern thing that a lot more people are doing. They never tag who is saying what in the conversation. And I was talking to my sister-in-law who was taking a writing course from a master. I think it was Joyce Carol Oates. And I can't remember. But anyway, this author that she was taking this class from states you should never... we need to get rid of these tags of he said, she said, and so on and so forth. And while I can see the repetitiveness of that is is old hat and no longer as much as an enjoyable read. I think the concept of just getting rid of all tags of who's talking isn't really the answer. So I felt like I had to reread dialogue over and over again, and that I was straight up guessing who was saying what, and I really hate that. I like to know what character is saying what. That seems like a level of confusion that is unnecessary to inject into a story that is already complex psychologically. To not know who's talking, it kind of drives me nuts, and that's just sounds like an old guy complaint for a new trend in writing, that we don't tag our dialogue as much as we used to. My other complaint is always a complaint that I find is a compliment to a writer, and that is that I feel like this is such an interesting idea that she did very little with, and it's a shame. Because this could fill up a novel, this concept of being able to download somebody in your subconscious. I think of what Murakami eventually did with the concept of sealing off the subconscious, or even Zelazny in The Dream Master, what he did with the idea of somebody else visiting the subconscious. The implications of this idea, I think she did very little with, and really, it would be awesome to see more of this. Just a brilliant idea. But as you know, I'm always really excited about anything to do with dreams and the subconscious. So yeah, Izumi Suzuki, I highly recommend you grab a copy of this. This has absolutely been worth a read. If Mishima versus, or Mishima being merged with Haruki Murakami isn't enough for you, just know that this is probably some of the more challenging sci-fi from the 70s that I have read. It has a maturity to it that is absolutely incredible. So yeah, give this a buy if you can find it, or a read, however you can. All right. If you'd like to help support the channel, join our Patreon. I've talked about the first story in this on our Patreon, and I also talk about novels when I'm halfway through them. Just give my thoughts as I'm going, so it's a lot of fun over there. You can join discussions and all that. And if you can't do that, then please give this video a like, subscribe if you haven't already, make a comment. We love chatting in the comments, and I really appreciate you watching. Thank you so much, and see you next time.